One of the reasons why I gave you a very brief biography of the speakers really started with Professor Carmel, because when you see everything he's done, it's too much to talk about. We really want to get down to the issues of this case. But he is most significantly a professor at the Kogod School of Business, which is part of the Washington College of Law. And he will have some perspectives that I think are quite important to share with us on what is artificial intelligence, which we call briefly AI in English, or IA in Portuguese, to help guide us through this. And you'll find that the term has broad and narrow meanings. So again, inviting you to check Professor Carmel on your Google and see everything that he's done. I, with great pleasure, recognize you, Professor. You may speak from your place or here, whatever works for you. Time. Excuse me, another tradition we have. Minister, we have what's called the president of the table. This is something we do in deference to our Brazils. And Minister Sebastião Reis is the president of the table for this particular topic. Ministro, I don't know whether you're intending to say a word or two in the beginning. Do you have a few remarks? Very, very briefly then. Sorry, I neglected to recognize you. Go ahead.
Bom dia a todos. Acompanhando já, inclusive, o que nosso querido amigo Peter já falou, eu acho que não é momento de muita conversa, muitas apresentações. Só gostaria de parabenizar os organizadores desse encontro, porque realmente é um tema extremamente palpitante. Eu sempre falo que nós estamos no momento de nos reinventarmos, ou seja, não só os advogados, mas os operadores do direito como um todo. E a justiça também. Ou seja, nós estamos a realidade americana é bem diferente da nossa realidade, mas o Brasil, então, onde há mais de 100 milhões de ações, se não encontrarmos soluções práticas, pragmáticas, para enfrentar esse tipo de problema, eu não sei onde nós vamos parar. Então, eu acho que não há como fugir dessa nova realidade, é um caminho sem volta, não temos como nos esconder ou como inventar obstáculos. Nós temos que enfrentar e usar o que a tecnologia nos oferece para aprimorar a prestação jurisdicional. Eu acho que nós vamos aqui começar, então, do básico, né, do que seria o que é a inteligência artificial, e eu passo, então, a palavra para o professor Erran Carmel.
Obrigado, bom dia. My name is Erran Carmel. I'm at the business school here at American University in Washington. Welcome to Washington, D.C. I have a little bit of a connection to Brazil as well. I'm afraid I don't speak Portuguese, but over the last 10 years, I've been traveling to Brazil. I'm working with a professor at the computer science department in the computer science school in PUC in Porto Alegre. I think I've been to Porto Alegre already 6 times in Rio Grande do Sul. So I feel a little bit Brazilian. I see one professor from PUC or from Porto Alegre. Yeah. Judge Michetti asked me to introduce the landscape of artificial intelligence, AI. So this is a very broad introduction. As a business and technology professor, our job is to bridge technology and business, and so that's what I plan to do with you.
Professor, a little bit back from the mic, they're saying.
Okay. We're celebrating 200 years now of artificial intelligence. In 1818, the British novelist Mary Shelley published the book Frankenstein, which, of course, you know. But to think about this, it is about the creation of a new technology, a new kind of technology, electricity, which was very new. And Mary Shelley had what she conceived was what this technology can create. And she created this fictional character, a monster. Okay. Obrigado. Better? Okay. And so we're celebrating 201 years to Mary Shelley. Another milestone is 1956. This is the famous Dartmouth Conference on Artificial Intelligence that brought together key scientists from MIT and from Harvard and from other places. So this happened in 1956. The term artificial intelligence was already known or used in 1956, but because of this workshop in the summer of 1956, it really became the word that we've used in the 60-some years since then. All right, so like a good professor, we have to start with a definition. So what is the definition of artificial intelligence? Well, there's no really good definition, so I'll start with short definitions. Artificial intelligence are cool things that computers cannot do yet. So it's at the edge, at the border. And in many ways, this is similar to the definition given by the famous science fiction writer and futurist Arthur C. Clarke, who has the so-called 3 laws of Arthur Clarke. And the third one is interesting, I think. He said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I think that this connects to AI because, and I paraphrase, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from AI. So the idea of AI is to take us to the boundaries of technology. A slightly more serious approach is this from MIT Technology Review that came out recently. It's scribble. I know that you can't read all of it, but it's actually quite good. I don't know if you have access to the slides. I don't think that they were printed out. Judge Machetti, where are you here? Will they have access to them?
To the slides, if you can make them available.
Yeah, yeah. So this is good. It'll make you think a little bit. Let me read the top. At the top, if you have to decide if it's AI, so you start at the top, and then at the bottom it says yes, it is AI. I just want to read you the first 5 branches at the top, which I think are useful to think about. The first one says, the first one says, can it see? The next one says, can it hear? The next one says, can it read? The next one says, can it move? And the final one says, can it reason? So those are the 5 key branches for artificial intelligence. So I think that this is very useful. All right, so we'll get into a more serious definition here. AI is the ability of a machine to perform cognitive functions we associate with human mind: perceiving, reasoning, learning, interacting with the environment, problem solving, and creativity. I like this definition. It's nice and short. It doesn't use too many academic pieces of logic. Let me give you some quick examples of what is included in AI, and I will return to some more examples in a few minutes. So AI includes robotics, autonomous vehicles, computer vision, language, that's spoken language, including translation. We're going to have AI translation here in the law school soon, yes? Yes? Okay. Virtual agents, those are the small devices that we talk to. But I want, as as someone who's been teaching about technology for many, many years, I want to emphasize that AI is really just another emerging technology. Emerging technology is the term that we in our field have been using for many, many decades. An emerging technology is a new technology, one that is moving into prominence. It's interesting for us because its applications are still largely unrealized. They are not common yet. For me as a business professor, an emerging technology is very interesting because we don't quite know how to manage it yet in our large corporations or our large governments. And when we talk about emerging technologies, we're not talking about a gadget. We're talking about a big umbrella, a big class of technologies. And so I teach about emerging technologies now for many, many years. In 2010, we began to talk about 4 big emerging technologies. There are 5 here. Let me start with the 4 that we talked about in 2010 when us business professors all over the world began to focus on these more deliberately. So the emerging technologies were social media, like Facebook, mobile, smartphones, analytics and big data, and the cloud. So we called it SMAC, S-M-A-C. Quickly, within about a year or two, we began to realize that there's another emerging technology, and that's the Internet of Things. That's when we have intelligence and lots of little devices. This one doesn't have intelligence yet, but it might in the future. And so we had to modify our acronym to SMACI. And so that's what I would teach my students. All right, but now a few years later, there have been some changes because these are emerging technologies, the new ones. The old ones are not as interesting anymore. And so 2 of them we threw out already. I don't really teach about them anymore because we pretty much understand how they work. We threw out social media. We all know how to use social media. Even my kids know how to use social media. It's not interesting anymore in that sense. We threw out mobile technology. We all know how to use our smartphones and how to manage them at this point. But there's some new technologies. And the new ones are up there on the left. So it's artificial intelligence and it's blockchain. I'm now teaching a class on blockchain. So I had a problem. I had to invent a new acronym, and I played with it and played with it. And this is the best I could come up with. Abaci is the plural of abacus, the old computer. So that's how you remember the 5 emerging technologies now, of which AI is just one of them. All right, so we have lots of complications with AI in terms of defining it and thinking about it. And one of them is that many systems have just a little bit of AI. AI is a continuum, really. There are systems which are entirely AI, and there are systems which have just a little bit of AI. And I think that it's important to recognize that it is a continuum. It's not a binary. And this leads us to another complication, which is the effect of hidden AI. The public does not consider a technology with AI to utilize AI once that application becomes commonplace. So this comes back to the definition that I gave you at the beginning. AI is what's really on the edge. Once it's understandable, we no longer consider it AI. 85% of Americans use digital products that have AI. Our smartphones have all kinds of applications with AI, and they might not consider them to have AI. And this comes from the Oxford University study, which I'll mention again. I think it's a good source for you to look at for AI. Another complication is that there will be no grand announcement about the coming of If if you look around, even for people who are looking at AI, there's almost nothing that announces, here, AI has arrived, this is the year of AI. That's not going to happen. And it reminds me a little bit of that jazz poet from the 1960s, Gil Scott-Heron, who said, the revolution will not be televised. Those of you who are jazz lovers might remember that. So in that sense, AI is like that. There will be no big announcement. There are some important milestones of AI, and I think that looking at games is a nice way to see the progression of AI. I'm just old enough to remember the 1965 World's Fair in New York City, where I, as a little boy, played tic-tac-toe against the computer. And I thought that was amazing back then, and it was amazing back then, and it was, by the standards of that day, artificial intelligence. So that was an IBM machine. In the 1990s, an IBM machine beat the best chess player in the world in chess, and that was considered AI. A few years ago, the famous trivia show, television show here in America, Jeopardy, the best computer from IBM, a computer called Watson, beat the best players. Just 2 years ago, an even more complicated game, Google's AlphaGo beat the best players in China, and just a month or two ago, Google machine beat the best players in a very complicated first player shoot 'em kind of games called StarCraft. The Google computer beat the best players. Now that's noteworthy because this is a video game and it's not a board game, and it also has it's three-dimensional, and it's not one where the computer can search all available solutions like the previous games. Just yesterday, I don't have this in the slide, but I want to add one more thing that's not in the slide. From a business perspective, there are 9 companies that rule the world of artificial intelligence, 9 global companies. 6 of them are American, and 3 of them are Chinese. They have most of the smart scientists in artificial intelligence, and they have most of the money. So 9 companies rule the world in AI. The American companies, the 6 American companies, are abbreviated as, this is a way to remember them, their abbreviation is G-Mafia. Again, G-Mafia. Okay, so write it down. So G is Google. M is Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, IBM, and Amazon. G-Mafia, they control AI. The other 3 are from, they're not American, they're from, not Brazil, they're from China. And they are the big 3 technology companies of China. They are abbreviated as BAT, B-A-T, B-A-T, and that's Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent. Those are the 3 giants in technology in Brazil. All right, a few more definitional concepts. The Turing tests, perhaps the original test of intelligence of AI, was put forward by the British computer scientist Alan Turing back in the 1940s. And the test is shown graphically here. A human interrogator interacts with 2 players. They're sitting behind a curtain, and the human is interacting with A and with B and cannot see them. And if the human interrogator cannot tell which one is the computer and which one is the human being, then that computer has passed the Turing test.
Just keep going.
Okay.
I'll cut you off.
All right.
At
Okay.
least another 15 minutes.
Okay. I'll be good. Now, naturally, there are This was a very early test of intelligence. There are probably better ones today, half a century later, but this is one that is understandable and I think intellectually interesting. Another term that's important is general AI versus narrow AI. General AI is that the machine can handle any intellectual task. Narrow AI is what we have today. We have many, many narrow applications of artificial intelligence. At some point, we all think that computers will reach some level of general AI, but nobody today says that we are at the level that computers can do general AI. A concept which I talk about, I teach classes on the future. I've been doing that for 10 years. As a technologist, I've become interested in thinking about the future methodically, and so I teach at the graduate level and at the undergraduate level classes about the future. And one of the interesting concepts about the future is this notion of singularity, and the main proponent of that is a futurist by the name of Ray Kurzweil, who's an American inventor, brilliant man. He started a university with the name, the Singularity. And so what is singularity? It's the notion that in the future, in this century, we will reach an inflection point with AI where AI will be smarter than us as human beings. And this is to some extent my addition to this, is that we will also be fused together with the computer. Because as I think you recognize, at some point a few decades from now, computers will begin to be put into our brains. Your grandchildren will have computers in their brains, or your great-grandchildren, but in any case, that will certainly happen. And so the singularity is the point at which we will enter a new phase of humanity. This is an important concept. Now, when Kurzweil talked about this originally, it was about the year 2000, he said that we will reach singularity in the year 2045. 2045. Now it's already 2019, and Kurzweil doesn't use that anymore. He thinks that it'll be a little bit later. He's not talking about dates anymore. But I think that what's important, I believe that we will reach that in this century. And so to be a little bit provocative, here is a situation of the future beyond the inflection point of the singularity. And in 2065, there will be an AI that will argue before the U.S. Supreme Court that the AI deserves the rights of a human because that AI is more intelligent and has sentience, has emotions, has consciousness. That'll come, maybe probably this century. I want to give you 7 examples of AI so that it'll help in the framing here. AI is self-driving cars. We also call them autonomous cars. These cars have a combination of AI techniques. There are 3 techniques. One is search. What AI is very good at is searching future states. That's how it arrives at some kind of conclusion. Number 2 is vision. A key part of AI is the ability to see and understand what it is seeing. And number 3 is decision-making under uncertainty. When a computer is playing chess, that's a decision-making under certainty. You know what all the possible future states are if you're a computer. All the possible combinations the computer knows. But when the car is driving down the street, the computer doesn't know every single state. And that's the decision-making under uncertainty. Next example of AI is content recommendation and personalization. This is happening more and more now. Many of the things that you're reading have personalization and recommendations, including advertising that uses AI techniques. So if it's Facebook or Twitter, or the music that's recommended to you by Spotify, or the movies that are recommended to you by Netflix. Those are AI techniques. Next type of AI are robots. Now, with robots, we have to understand that an industrial robot is what we call a dumb robot, a stupid robot. And so a robot that has AI is one that is able to do complex behavior. So we have to define what that complex behavior is, but not now, not in today's class. But what a robot does is it senses what's around it, and it's able to do something physically as a result. Next type of AI is surveillance technology. This allows the system to follow people from camera to camera on the street or in a building. It has wonderful applications, benign applications, like helping a mother find her child who's lost in the street or in a park. And it has very ominous implications, the George Orwell implications of following us wherever we are. Here's another type of AI. This is now called deep fakes. I hope that there's a word for this in Portuguese, because this is a very important concept. Is there a word in Portuguese for this? You use deep fake? Okay. All right.
Yeah, we use deep fakes.
Deep fake, they use that same word.
Yeah.
There's no translation, not yet.
Yeah. We should all be very worried about deep fakes. So I'll read to you what this says here. You see two pictures here. Can you tell which of these photographs is generated by AI? The left or the right? Well, both of them are generated by AI. They're completely fake. These are not real people. They're made by a manufacturer called NVIDIA. It's generated by a relatively new type of AI called adversarial networks. And these are networks which are taught to improve by competing against each other. Computer A versus computer B, and they can train 24 hours a day. They never get tired. This is another type of AI. I know that it is more common in English-speaking countries. Many of us here in America have one of these at home. It's either called Alexa or Google Home. I'm curious, how many of you have something like this in your home? I see 3 or 4 hands here. That's it. In the United States today, if I did this question, probably more than half of the people in the audience would be raising their hand. It's becoming much more common. So the two big players are really this.
Just say what that is, Alexa. May not even know the concept.
Okay, so they know Alexa, yeah.
What is that?
Oh, okay.
What is Alexa?
So Alexa is a small device that you have in your home. Typically, it's positioned in the living room, and you could speak to it, and you can ask Alexa to buy you something, to play some music, to say what the weather is. So you talk to it like you do with Siri on your smartphone, and you say, Alexa, tell me what the weather will be like today. Now, she is listening to you all day long in the living room. All day long. And in American homes, it's now quite common. The kids are getting used to it. They talk to Alexa. Alexa also has a sense of humor. I like to ask her for her jokes. Some of them are funny, some of them are not. So the main player is Alexa. I have at my home, I have Google Home. So I say, hey, Google, when I want to ask a question. But most people have Alexa. And customers spoke to Alexa tens of billions of time more in 2018 compared to 2017. Billions. The CEO of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, said that the number of Alexa research scientists in his company grew by 2 times just in the last year, in 2018. They've improved Alexa's ability to understand requests and answer questions by 20% just in the last year. They've added billions of facts, and they've doubled the number of Alexa skills to over 80,000. So I encourage you, they're not very expensive in the United States today. If you're interested in what the technology is doing for next Christmas, buy yourself one of these devices, Alexa or Google Home, and start playing with it. I think you'll learn a lot about AI from doing this.
Is it available in Brazil, but in English, for example?
Somebody here who has a question. Those of you who raised your hand, do you know? Available in Brazil? Only in English.
No, it's available in English. That's the point. Interesting. In Brazil. In English.
We have to teach Alexa to speak Portuguese.
Brazilian Portuguese.
Brazilian, the only one. It's important.
I think that that's proof that we're not at general artificial intelligence yet. It's very narrow still. In any case. Okay. I'll just introduce this. There's 2 concepts that are important in thinking about artificial intelligence. So I like this drawing. I think it captures the landscape of artificial intelligence quite nicely. You see computer science over the big circle, then there's artificial intelligence, and within that there's machine learning and deep learning. So I'll mention that briefly, and of course all of them are based to some extent on data science, the use of statistics. So machine learning is important because machine learning is about the machine not being static, but being able to learn from new data and new experiences all the time. So this is very important. So it gets better the more data it has, the more experience it has. So it can learn your voice, it can learn what kind of music you like, what kind of music you don't like, and so on. Other applications for machine learning are credit card fraud, because it knows the patterns of your travel and your purchases, and so it can detect when you have a likely fraud. All right, if this is a good time, I have a little bit more, but if this is a good time for a little bit of discussion, this is...
Good morning, Professor. My name is Erran. I'm a state public prosecutor in Brazil, but I'm here doing my Master of Law degree at American University, which is a very, very good thing to learn that you are here as well. And my focus here is to research technology and corruption. That's one of my big goals. And as I'm learning more about artificial intelligence and all these technologies, I wonder, and I would like you to have some thoughts on it. So artificial intelligence and all these technologies is based on data, big data and massive tons of data. The European Union is very concerned about the private data and how we use that. What are your concerns about the use of private data in this project? And what legal and ethical issues can you have into this field?
You want to repeat that question?
Yeah, so the question was about what are my thoughts about the amount of data that's being collected and my concerns about privacy. So I speak now as an individual, not as a legal scholar or an ethicist. For many years, I would say to my class, I think that the concerns about privacy are overblown. I said this in the 1990s. I said this in the early 2000s. I would say, so what if they have your name and address? In the 1990s, I would say, so what if they have your name and address? They'll send you a few more magazines and there'll be a few more pieces of paper in your mailbox. Who cares? Well, I no longer think like that. In terms of advice to this group, I don't want to go further than that, but I've changed my opinion about that as a technologist, and I think that says something.
Other questions?
Yes.
Yes, on the side here.
Professor, I'd like your opinion on drones, police equipment, and the legal impacts that will probably happen in the next future.
Again, if you repeat so that everyone...
Yeah, the question was about drones, otherwise known as unmanned aerial vehicles. We also realize that there are stupid drones and there are AI drones that can make decisions by themselves. And so we have to think about that as well. I'm very concerned about not so much the privacy. Privacy is an issue, of course, with drones, but I'm concerned about drones being weaponized. That's what I am really concerned about. There's always some ways to solve a drone looking through my window. It's not terribly comfortable sometimes, but we can deal with that. But a drone with a weapon, I'm really worried about that.
Including a private person, not necessarily a country.
No.
Very good. Another question from the group? Let me pose the question in practical terms. What should a Brazilian judge, lawyer, take away from your discussion of AI? In other words, what are the key points that they should go back and think about, focus on? I don't know, did everyone hear me as I asked the question? Maybe not. My question was, what should a Brazilian lawyer, judge, take away from your conversation and the conversation of the next 2 days and really think about, ponder, that might be of use to Brazil in its whole encounter with AI? And maybe it's a matter of summarizing the absolute key points that you think should be part of the current discussion.
There's so many ways to answer your question. I want to say that as a technologist and as a futurist, I am an optimist. There are two kinds of futurists. There are the dystopian futurists who think that technology is terrible. We have to create all kinds of laws and regulations about new technology because they're genetically modified food and we'll have genetically modified people. It's all terrible. And there's the other side. I'm closer to the other side. I'm a utopian, a techno-utopian. I think that technology is making our world better, but I recognize many, many problems. And I would like to suggest that you, when you go back to Brazil, think about that technology is making our lives better. We're healthier. We can connect to our children and our grandchildren all day long. I think that that's wonderful. I can ask them how they're doing. When I was growing up, I couldn't do that with my mother and my father. Technology is, I think, a positive force, but we recognize that it's becoming more and more powerful. And I suggest that much of what we look at is driven by a value of looking at the world optimistically or pessimistically. And I suggest that lean a little bit more towards optimism.
All right. Any further questions or comments from anyone? Yes, Christine. Go ahead. Yeah, use your mic. You have a mic there? No, maybe you don't.
Last year I had a chance to visit MIT, and I visited
Project what? Okay.
Come here, so here's the mic here. Come up to the microphone.
I've spoken to some of the engineers from MIT, and they were really worried about losing control of the artificial intelligence. What do you think about it?
I understand. I was asked about the concern about losing control with artificial intelligence. I think I'm a believer that we will hit the singularity before the end of this century. In other words, I believe, as a technologist, looking at the advancements of technology, that we, the human race, will enter a new stage of humanity before the end of this century. We will no longer be the people we are now, because we will be genetically modified and we will be fused with technology. Our brains will have technology, our bodies will have prosthetics and enhancements. We will be able to see better and hear better.
When you're talking about chips, you're talking about putting actual physical pieces in the brain of children so that it improves all those faculties?
Right. So
Anybody surprised by that?
I think that will happen certainly before the end of this century. And so I think that's coming, and I think, again, this is driven by values. There's no science to this. It's driven by values. I argue that we have to accept that as the next phase of our humanity. That's where we're going. That's where technology is taking us. And to accept that and to say this is our humanity, this is our destiny, is to advance into that stage. But it's at that point humanity will be so different. It's hard to predict where we're heading. Now that stage I think is many years away. Most of us here in this room will be dead by then. But I think we have to plan for that. Now losing control is also an issue. But we have. There's nothing guaranteed about this. In 1945, we had atomic bombs. Technology is something that can be very, very dangerous. There's no question.
Any other questions or comments? Would you like to make a peroration, a final statement of any sort?
It was a pleasure and an honor to speak to you. As a technological utopian, I hope that we will all work together to make this world a better place.
Thank you very much.